This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you are in the future because you're listening to Cristina Gomez and Shifting the Paradigm.
Howdy, folks. This is Lou Elizondo, and you are listening to my very good friend Cristina Gomez on Shifting the Paradigm.
This is Ray Sobbs from the UnX Network, and you're listening to Shifting the Paradigm with the intrepid Cristina Gomez on the X.
You're listening to the UnX Network, KUNX-DB, Kansas City, Missouri.
Welcome to Shifting the Paradigm. I'm Cristina Gomez on the Paradigm Shifts channel and on the X, the new mainstream, KUNX Digital Broadcasting Talk Radio. Are you ready for this? Because we're about to embark on an hour and a half of UFO shenanigans and paranormal adventures. Right here is where we look and think outside the proverbial box. We jump down those rabbit holes where you get a red Tic Tac instead of a red pill. First off, make sure you subscribe and share these shows on social media to those who you think are having their minds and eyes open to the reality of the UFO mystery. All of these shows are great primers, and in the push for more clarity, transparency, and disclosure, the more voices demanding answers, the better. For those listening on KUNX Talk Radio and affiliates, I have two other shows each week that only air on my YouTube channel. Mysteries with a History is on Thursdays at 2:30 p.m. PST with my co-host Jimmy Church of Fade to Black Radio on KUNX. And each week we cover a different topic in depth. And on Fridays at 3 p.m. PST, the show Strange Paradigms is where I and a different guest co-host cover all the strange weekly news and mysterious headlines from around the world. So definitely check out my website at strangeparadigms.com for all show archives, more information, and direct video links to my channel. I'm so pumped that I'm getting more and more messages from young individuals, high schoolers through college age, telling me they're just getting into the topics we discuss on these shows and asking me questions like, what can I do to find answers to these mysteries? Curiosity is a beautiful thing. And when you have the raw curiosity of unbiased minds taking a fresh look into things, it really is a force to be reckoned with. And that is such a big part of my mission, to bring more and more young minds into this and asking those tough questions, because they'll soon be the lawmakers, military leaders, community leaders, and voices in the World Wide Web reaching out to each other as a new generation of truth seekers. My guest today is Thomas Winterton. He is the superintendent of the infamous Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. Growing up, he only lived about 6 miles from the ranch, and being the third generation to live in the area of the Uintah Basin. The ranch gained its mainstream fame from the TV show The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, and it has had several handlers, such as the Sherman family, Robert Bigelow of Bigelow Aerospace, and now commercial real estate developer Brandon Fugel, all of which have experienced or heard stories of unexplained phenomena, from UFO encrypted sightings to portals opening and seeing creatures exit through them, to unexplained physical injuries, and so much more. Let's get into some quick history of the ranch. The Navajo are believed to have cursed the land that the ranch sits on after being mistreated by the Ute tribe. This particular tribe believes these sinister spirits are shapeshifters, using a type of black magic that is known for its demonic ability to kill, possess, curse, inflict disease upon, and read the minds of others. And while this all sounds eerie, Skinwalker Ranch is a fascinating place. So it is my honor to speak with Thomas Winterton and to hear his experiences and insights on the matter. Thomas, welcome to Shifting the Paradigm. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm so good, thank you. And I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. There's a lot I want to ask you, but let's start with the basics before jumping down some extraordinary rabbit holes. So, you are the superintendent of the Skinwalker Ranch. What does that entail in the sense of responsibilities and duties?
Well, Brandon has entrusted me to pretty much oversee the day-to-day activities out here on the ranch. I oversee the physical facilities, such as the ranch house and the command center. I oversee the grazing and the ground, so I make sure that we have cattle here to graze. We lease that out. Helps us take care of the place and keep it from turning into a fire hazard in the middle of the hot summer, as well as gives us, animals to study as biosensors, so to speak, their behaviors and patterns here on the ranch. I oversee the watering, and then on the science side, I work with our chief principal investigator, Eric Bard, and work with him to make sure that he has the infrastructure needed to put his scientific instruments up, whether that be cameras or any other kind of meters and monitors. Make sure that we have power and internet to those, which on 512 acres, a very diverse topographical and we have the red rocks to the north. We have the fields, the lush green fields here in the middle, and then sagebrush to the south with sand dunes. And so it's very diverse and spread out. So that can be challenging trying to get network and power to where we need it. And then on the security side, I work with security to make sure that they have the tools and assets that they need to be successful at what they're doing. Whether, when I first got here, I built a road around the perimeter of the property to allow them to more easily access the entire perimeter. I've worked with them to get cameras and infrastructure up for them. So I kind of oversee that, and then I'm also the public liaison a lot with the local area. Jim Morse is very involved with that as well. But that's kind of a basic rundown of what I do here.
What was the primary reason for you to assume that job position, given everything you had heard growing up about the ranch and the possible dangers there?
It's a great question. In 2016, when Brandon bought the ranch, he sent his very close confidant, Jim Morse, out to figure out kind of what it was here and what they should do with it. And in doing so, Jim happened to come into Roosevelt and stay at my motel. So my wife and I own several small luxury boutique hotels, and one of them is in Roosevelt, and Jim happened to stay there. And growing up here, I'd heard the lore of the ranch, and there was all kinds of rumors going around town. The government's in here, and all kinds of conspiracy theories, and shrouded in secrecy. And so, I remember coming down here when I was in high school. Me and my buddies would bring our dates down and jump the gate and start walking down the road, to scare our dates. We never made it in very far, but. So this place was very secret, and Jim Morse comes rolling into town. It was on a Sunday, the first week that Brandon bought the place, and checked him into my hotel. And the next day when he was getting ready to leave, we struck up a conversation, and he he found out that I was a licensed general contractor here in the state of Utah, and he said, I'm out here representing a very successful businessman who doesn't want his identity disclosed, but he bought this ranch called Skinwalker Ranch. And he's all, have you ever heard of it? And I'm like, yeah, I've heard of it. And he's all, we're really trying to just get an idea of, where everything's at and who's on first base. And so he asked me if I would be interested in coming out and doing a property inspection for him. And the opportunity to come out on this secretive place that nobody else was allowed to go, I admit I jumped on the opportunity just for the notoriety of it. And so I agreed to come out here and do a property inspection. Came out here and found the ranch in a pretty sad state of disrepair. There was a lot of things that needed immediate attention. The wastewater system, the septic system was failing. We had the caretakers that were living in the ranch house. Their bathroom was clear full of black mold and just some serious issues that needed addressed right away. So I jumped in and helped Brandon. Jim took me out Salt Lake, introduced me to Brandon, and I got to spend a few hours with Brandon where he explained to me his reasons behind buying the ranch and kind of what his vision was. And so I helped him start fixing some of these things that really needed attention out here. And in the process of that, Brandon received a letter from Uinta County, which Skinwalker Ranch is in Uinta County. And Uinta County's letter told Brandon that the road that went right through the middle of the ranch was a public easement and that it was illegal to lock it and that immediately they needed that gate unlocked, which sent alarm bells ringing, to Brandon and to all of us that were concerned about keeping the ranch locked down. And so I went to work and was the public representative of Adamantium Real Estate, and I assisted Brandon, and I went through the process with the county commissioners and got that road shut down, vacated, and deeded back to Brandon so that we could legally shut it. For years, Bigelow had kept it locked. And when the county made an issue, Mr. Bigelow basically had the attitude of, I guess you can make a legal issue out of it if you want. And the county just didn't want to go that route. Brandon's very forthright. He doesn't like to dance in the gray area. And so he wanted to make sure all those issues were resolved. So I helped him get that vacated and closed. And he just asked me if I would stay on and run the place for him. And so I've been here ever since. So I've been here since basically a week after he purchased the place and still here today.
It seems that as soon as you entered the ranch, you had so much work to do. Can you share with us some of those conspiracy theories and rumors of government involvement that you can remember hearing back before you started?
Oh, I think the earliest and first ones I remember is, shortly after the Shermans sold it to Mr. Bigelow, we were told that there was a whole bunch of black semis and semi-trailers back here on the ranch and that they were government, that it was the intelligence agency. And of course, we'd all heard about the UFOs and a lot of the stories that were published in the Deseret News and reported in the local newspapers. And so we were told that the government had come in and closed it down, and it was kind of black ops in here. That's some of the first stories. And then we started hearing stories of NASA being out here and NASA representatives, and of course, what is NASA doing? And so then you start wondering, some of the rumors about, the government using this as a secret base, testing experimental aircraft, that they were the ones behind the mutilations, you name it. The thing about a small town is it doesn't take long for rumors to get around the area. And I've heard it said before from the locals that a story's not worth repeating unless you can make it better. So, it doesn't take long for things to get grossly exaggerated. And I'm not saying that's the case with every story, but the telephone game, it starts out with the first person. By the time it gets to the 10th person, it doesn't even closely resemble what it started out as. So you name it, we've heard the rumors for it.
I'm sure that the stories get embellished as they pass from person to person. Now, talking of stories and rumors, getting into your youth, you actually grew up about 6 miles from the ranch. Is that right?
Yeah. So I actually lived close to where I grew up, proving all my school teachers right that I didn't go very far in life. Um, I actually lived just across the field from where I grew up, but it's about 6 miles away the crow flies from the ranch.
So, growing up, you heard many interesting and I guess spooky stories from around that area of the Uintah Basin, tales and legends of the area and the ranch itself. Can you share with us some of the most memorable things you've heard, which I suppose to this day you could say, yeah, that stuff does happen?
Well, I don't know about being able to say, yeah, that stuff happens, but I remember the first couple stories that I'd heard. Obviously, the cattle mutilations uh, made a big wave through the area. The UFOs, uh, heard a story about the UFO coming and turning Sherman's dogs into three piles of goo. Um, Heard the story about the dire wolf. That so, for those that aren't familiar with the ranch, these stories, there's one story where, and I'm not the best person to ask about these. I've never read the books, watched the movies, so I'm getting the passed down version, and I'm not a detail oriented person anyway. So the one story with the dogs is that there was something going on outside, and Mr. Sherman went out there, and there was a UFO or an orb. I'm not sure if it was a UFO or an orb, but it was out there, and the dogs took after and started chasing this, and they got to the bottom of the field, and then there was a yelp, and it was silent. And the next day, when Mr. Sherman went looking for the dogs, he found three piles of like jelly-like substance, like the dogs had been turned into goo. There's the dire wolf, which is that Mr. Sherman was out there, and there was a wolf that came up, and at first they started, and it was big. It was a dire wolf, which anybody that knows has been supposedly extinct for a while. But they started petting this wolf supposedly, and then the wolf went and grabbed a calf and was trying to pull it through the fence. And so Mr. Sherman shot it. I think it was a 357 revolver. Shot it several times, and it didn't do anything. So then he had one of the kids run in the house and grab his 30-06 and came out, and he shot the wolf with that, and a piece of flesh fell off of it, and the wolf turned around and walked away, and they never found it, disappeared. So I'd heard the story of Junior Hicks from Junior Hicks retelling or telling about finding these what seemed to be metal rods out here in the eastern field. This is the field that's adjacent to the ranch house, the command center. For those that see it on TV, it's the one that surrounds the helipad. And Mr. Hicks Jr. tells the story of finding these rods out there, and then supposedly the Bigelow team, scoured the field looking for more of them. And Junior, I remember Junior saying that he told quite a few different things that they tried to do to this metal bars. They tried to melt them, they tried to cut them, and they couldn't do it. And they were of the opinion that the type of material was not of this planet. So those are some of the stories that I heard, when I was younger. And the cattle mutilations, of course, no blood under them, the sex organs removed, eye facing the sky was taken out, and some of these daylight mutilations where Mr. Sherman was going through the field checking the calves and found a newborn calf there and continued through the field to check the rest of the herd. And when they came back, I can't remember if it was 20 or 40 minutes later, here's this calf that he checked that was healthy when they left it. This calf was mutilated. Again, no blood, no indication of the trauma having taken place right there in the field, almost as if the calf had been removed and then put back. So those are the stories that I remember being told as when I was younger.
For the dogs that you stated that turned into goo, was that gooey substance tested in a lab? And also, was law enforcement called about the mutilations of the cattle?
So that's a great question. If that goo was sent to the lab, we have not been told of that. We have not seen the results of that. When Brandon purchased the ranch, came as is, and Mr. Bigelow did not volunteer any data or evidence that he had gathered during his 20 years of owning the ranch. So we came in kind of with a blank slate, and we really have no idea what did or did not take place. We've reached out and attempted to contact as many of the individuals that were involved during that time. I'm personally under the opinion that many of them are under a non-disclosure, that they're not allowed to talk contractually, because many of them have not been willing to visit with us. So, and I don't get the feeling it's because they don't want to. It's a feeling that they can't, which leads me to believe that it's an NDA. As far as your second question, as was shown on the TV series that we did, Chris Porritt was actually a sheriff's deputy at the time, and Chris Porritt knew both Ken and Edith Myers as well as the Shermans. So yes, and I've since talked to other law enforcement that have been here to the ranch. So they did indeed call law enforcement, and these individuals say that there was definitely strange things happening here on Skinwalker Ranch.
Thomas, you're the third generation of your family to live in that area of the basin. So I'm curious to know if your parents or grandparents ever gave you insightful stories, either about the Skinwalker legends or the ranch itself. And did they ever warn you about the area?
So I will tell you that without singling out any particular family member, yes, I have some immediate family that have had some very scary experiences here in the Uintah Basin. Not necessarily specific to the ranch, but involving some UAPs, very up close and personal. I myself, as a kid, I had one experience, but it was not that scary. I didn't even know what I was seeing when I saw it. And look, my parents knew the Shermans. My dad used to haul their cows. He was a truck driver, hauled their cows. So I'd heard the stories from them, but I don't know that they ever warned me, other than just sharing some personal experiences. My parents, grandparents, and the such.
Thomas, we're coming towards a break. We'll be right back after this.
Million gigawatt paranormal powerhouse, KUNX-DB, the X.
This is Micah Hanks of the Micah Hanks program right here on KUNX. And right now, you're having your paradigm shifted by the one and only Cristina Gomez.
interest in the paranormal, then you'll love the unxnetwork.com. The X is your streaming audio and video for everything supernatural, strange, and mysterious, like UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts, and so much more. From hosts like Jimmy Church, Whitley Strieber, Micah Hanks, and Cristina Gomez. Visit the unxnetwork.com show page for a complete list of all the paranormal programs you'll find on the X. Be sure to follow us on Twitter for updates at KUNXDB. Follow our Facebook group, UNX Network. Find the podcast on Spotify, iHeart, Audible, and Apple Podcast. It's time.
It's new.
It's the X.
Hi. This is Race Hobbs, head of programming at the new UNX Network, and you're locked on Shifting the Paradigm with the intrepid Cristina Gomez on the X.
Are you intrigued by paranormal talk radio? You'll love the new Paranormal radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Howdy, folks. This is Lou Elizondo, and you are listening to my very good friend Cristina Gomez on Shifting the Paradigm.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Welcome back. With me today is Thomas Winterton, the Superintendent of the Skinwalker Ranch. You mentioned before the break that some of the family members had close-up and personal UAP encounters. Were they scary experiences for the witness?
So the individuals just were stated. Well, the thing is I have multiple family members that experienced things, and each experience was different. No abductions, no, none of that. Just sightings, but close enough that they were scary. You know, it wasn't like some distant off sighting. It was pretty close. And I've got multiple family members. The thing is that since our TV series started airing, I think this has been the biggest takeaway for me is I can't go anywhere these days, the grocery store, the post office, wherever in the area, without having individuals pull me off to the side and sharing their personal experience with something unexplained. Most of them have to do, well, I'd say 95% of them have to do with UFOs, UAPs. And so, you know, the fact that I have multiple family members that have all had their own experience, given the enormity of the population that's come up to me and shared theirs, it seems to be like statistically in line, proportionally. So a lot of people here in the basin have seen these sightings. One involved driving down a long straight road. Here in the basin, we've got several stretches of highway that are just straight for miles, and looking in their mirror and seeing a bright object just behind them, accelerating to very, very high speeds. This is in the middle of the night, and having the object stay up with them until they reached, as they started getting close to town and the population center, then the object disappeared. Other stories of being out again in a very rural area, ranching and such, and having an object appear not too far above head, which can be unnerving when you're already out there in the middle of the night and it's dark and you're tending water or tending cows or whatever it be, and you have something like that appear. It can be very disturbing, I imagine. So those are some of the types of stories that have been relayed to me without betraying confidences and giving away individuals' identities.
Of course, anyone that has their own encounter, it's very unnerving. And for the most part, you don't really know how to react. You would just assume that you would pull out your cell phone and take pictures or a video. But for the most part, you kind of almost stand still, petrified of the situation. Well, on top of growing up so close to the ranch, you were part of a scout group as a child. And while in scout camp, you got to hear from individuals who you knew to have integrity and good reputations. And they would convey tales and fantastic stories about the area, including mentions of UFOs, aliens, and Bigfoot. So, my question is this: to you, your family, neighbors, and locals, is this all a given, like a well known and accepted part of life in the area? Like it's nothing new, you're just have to get used to it and it's no big deal?
Boy, so these are the stories that are told around the campfire at scout camps and such. But I don't know, like, we rarely speak of these things. I mean, I've heard these stories maybe once or twice in my 41 years, as far as like from family members, and then scouts. I mean, that your summer camp rituals where you're around the campfire and you hear leaders who are pretty credible and who, by the way, it's one thing to think of an adult as credible when you're a child. It's another when you become adult yourself and you look back and you realize, those are solid human beings, like solid in every aspect of their life, whether it be professional or their family or, you just look and you're like, there's nothing there that denotes somebody being crazy. So, but, really, I mean, other than coming up at scout camps and that, it really isn't spoken of a lot. And as a matter of fact, when people do pull me aside and share their stories, it's almost always prefaced with, "Hey, I want to share this with you, but if you tell anybody I said this, I'll call you a liar." They don't want people to know. And there's still this huge stigma around it, where if you witness this, then somehow you're crazy, you wear a tinfoil hat. So there's still a huge stigma. And the people that trust me enough to share their personal experiences with me, they still swear me to secrecy. I mean, I'm allowed to relate their experiences that they share, but I can't tie it back to them. And I had a local ecclesiastical leader pull me aside a while ago, and I could see he just was so conflicted inside about the things he'd captured on his cell phone, and then trying to process like how that fits in the whole belief system and the programming paradigm that he's grown up with. And I could see the conflict as he's sharing this, like, how do I compartmentalize this? How do I do this? So as far as like me, I heard these things growing up as a kid, but wouldn't say that it was like, I would say that there's been enough of it that it is kind of accepted as like, well, I saw one too. What's the big deal type of thing, where there's been so many people that have had these sightings that it's like everybody's got their own to share. And maybe amongst each other when we're sharing these, we feel less crazy because so many of us have had these experiences.
You're right. When people pull you aside and relate their own experiences to you and then demand you not to share that story, it adds a lot of credibility in a way. And they're not looking for fame or some kind of exposure. And you mentioned earlier about your own UFO sighting when you were a child. And I understand it was an orange crescent that you saw near an oil refinery at night, and you assumed it was the moon, only later to find out with your mother that it was a no moon night. So, my question is this: have you ever seen anything similar to that orange crescent shape since? Or has anyone you've spoken to mentioned seeing the same type of UFO?
I have only seen it that one time. Um, at least in the way that I saw it. I've only witnessed that once. And you're correct. I just thought it was the moon, so it wasn't a scary experience. I actually was like, wow, that's beautiful. Only to find out later that what I thought it was, the moon, it wasn't. Um, I did have an individual. I was actually eating lunch at one of the little local hamburger spots here in Roosevelt, and I had a gentleman who grew up not too far from the ranch. Out, he grew up on a ranch himself. They had a lot of acreage. And they were more to the east of Skinwalker Ranch, but in the general vicinity. And he related an incident of a UFO. Him and his dad were out tending water, and this object actually, according to him, actually chased them down, and they had to ditch the four-wheeler and hide in a ditch for a while. The way that he described it sounded similar to what I had witnessed, although different in size, but size could merely be, the distance at what we're viewing it from. So who knows?
I have heard quite a few stories where sometimes a UFO is actually chasing down a person. So, for these people that you just mentioned that had this encounter, do you know what they were feeling or why they believed they were being chased?
Well, they believe they're being. I guess it was really close to them, and I think that probably the feeling was fear, simply in the fact that he told me that they hid in the ditch for quite a long time. And so, I put myself in their shoes. Me trying to read more into it would be simply me guessing. But if I put myself in their shoes and think, gal, for you to stay in a ditch that long, even up to a couple hours, like you had to have been pretty terrified at what was there to hide that long.
Curiously, these car chasing UFO aspects happen a lot in Australia, from what I learned from an Aussie researcher in a recent interview. So, Thomas, being the superintendent, you have full situational awareness of all the science, preparation, and experiments that go on at Skinwalker Ranch. Now, only a fraction of the preparation actually makes the cut to the TV show, The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. In season 3, episode 1, you had the canisters prepared and dropped through a zone above the epicenter of many phenomena, the triangle, and dropped from a helicopter. Can you share with us what didn't make the cut? As in, did you all have a meeting to come up with the experiment, and how much preparation went into it?
Oh, a lot. Yeah, I mean, I actually sat down and did the math one day because, we filmed several months, 5 days a week, long, grueling days of filming to come up with those 10 episodes. And so I sat down and did the math as to what percentage of what we film versus what percentage makes it on TV, and it's less than 1%. So the individuals that are watching the TV show are seeing basically the highlights and the lowlights, those things for which the production company feels are gonna be the most entertaining, we'll call it, and captivating by the general audience. What doesn't make the cut is the hours and sometimes days and weeks of preparation leading up to that. So this canister experiment, we come up these a lot. Eric has been extremely focused on GPS here on the ranch, for reasons that will yet be unveiled as we move along. But this experiment was because of what happened with the helicopter, and we've got this 5,000 foot mark supposedly up there on the ranch that's been elusive. We tried putting a weather balloon through it, only to have the GPS data quit transponding when it got, its last transpond point that it sent to us was right when it was getting to that 5,000 foot mark, and then it quit. And this was a very robust system that has been heavily used and has a great track record as far as reliability. We tried getting up there with the helicopter only to have the avionics, the altimeter telling the helicopter that there's something, 38 to 40 feet underneath. And that's a classic example of on TV, if the audience will go back to that series, as Cameron and Travis and Eric are up there, Bryant and I are on the ground, and we have the radar from the ranch, the live radar that's streaming, and our objective on the ground was to help them get to the right points up in the air, based on where the radar was tracking them. And at one point, I think the show cuts away, and you can see in the background, and you can see like all kinds of squiggly marks. It's because Cameron spent a lot of time trying to elude whatever it was. He was doing some pretty aggressive maneuvering to see if they could get out of whatever it was that seemed to be underneath of them. So we've got this spot that has proven to be very elusive. We ended up having to abort the helicopter exercise. And so the idea is, we'll drop these bottles down, and some of them, not all of them, but some of them had GPS trackers in them, and we'll watch and see what the data shows. Part of that is that Eric, before we put instrumentation up in the air or in an experiment, Eric has to know that it is working properly. And so just as an example, the prep going into those bottles, Eric and I had a box that all those sensors were laid out in. We left the receiver at the command center, and then we walked up onto the mesa. We walked down the mesa, and we walked a deliberate path all the way down. And he had those GPS trackers working for days and days so he could gather data. He wanted to know what their behavior was, And so by the time it rolls around, and we try to take into account everything. Like Eric was worried about maybe the little boards overheating and giving wrong data. So we tried to accommodate for that. We tried one of the precautions we took is like, we kept those data out, or the GPS sensors out, until right before we were ready to load them in the helicopter. Then we loaded them up, or we packaged them up, put them in, and we tried to package them in a way that they wouldn't overheat, because Eric was worried that the heat might interfere with the signal stream. So we took great precautions, and everything that we tested gave us perfect data up to that point. So we had GPS trackers that we felt confident were giving accurate data. And then the bottles, like we went to extreme measures to make sure that the bottles were identical. We weighed every single one, and we whether it's fishing weights or we did a container of water, in there so that each one weighed exactly the same amount of grams so that they would fall. And then I believe it's Travis did the calculations at 5,000 feet and the mass and everything as like what the fall time should be for that bottle based on its mass and its weight and everything. So all of this prep, I mean, we have days of prep going into this, and then it's it's frustrating when you get into the experiment and right off the bat the trackers aren't responding or sending data back after all the testing we did. So there are literally dozens and dozens of hours, if not way more, that go into the experiments and getting them ready to go.
And with the canisters not being able to record data, is there a plausible explanation for that?
Look, I'm sure that there could be many mundane reasons why they stopped. But we did our very best to test for every single one of those. So if they stop transponding when they hit the ground, well, that could simply be the jarring from the ground. That makes perfect sense. But when we took such care and were so careful with them up to the point of getting them on the helicopter and taking off, and then they're not even reading, no, the answer is we don't know why that would be. We were not able to recover all of our GPS trackers. To this day, we still haven't found them. And so we found a couple, as was shown on the series, thank goodness. And the thing about these trackers, fortunately, is the part that wasn't working was the part that was transponding the signal to the ground. They all had data cards in them, little ScanDisk cards, and so they were data logging internally, which is the data that you see on TV, where Eric sits us down and shows us where the helicopter flew into the mesa. That was from the little ScanDisk that was on the device itself. So they were data logging, thank goodness, or else we wouldn't have captured any data. They just were not able to relay it to us on the ground.
Wow, unbelievable. And while on the topic of the triangle and it being a focal point or epicenter for a lot of mysterious phenomena, do you yourself experience specific things when you're close to it aside from headaches? And I mean experiencing aspects of the different phenomena and side effects such as nausea, dizziness, or wanting to vomit.
Yes, I've had 4 distinct experiences that happened at the Triangle. 2 of them coming early in the days of the investigation, before there was any television show, before there was even a thought of TV. And they both actually were of the same origin. And that was the first time we had what we thought were some trespassers on the ranch. There had been a basketball being thrown at the ranch house, and the caretakers had called, were just really scared, and did a sweep of the property around the ranch house, determined that couldn't find anybody. And so I thought, well, maybe they ran down the road towards the west to escape when they saw me coming in from the east. So I got in my vehicle and started to drive westbound across the ranch. When I got to the Triangle, this is at midnight, 1 a.m., between midnight and 1 a.m. I had my window down. I was kind of driving with my knees. I had my shotgun resting kind of out the window and holding it with my right hand. I had a spotlight in my left hand. The window was down. It was in the summer. Spotlighting, trying to see if I could see anybody. I get down to the Triangle, and I heard what I thought was an audible voice say, "Stop, don't go any further," or something similar to that. I think that was the exact words, but I can't be for sure at this point. It's too long ago. But told me to stop, not go any further. And at the time, I grew up very religious. You hear the Holy Ghost, the still small voice. And I didn't even think anything about it. I just obeyed, and I stopped the car. I actually got out, shouted some profanity up into the rocks, telling the kids that if I caught them, they were going to be in big trouble. I actually shot my shotgun off up there trying to scare people out. Nobody popped out. I got in the car, went back, never found anybody. 6 months later, now it's wintertime. There's snow on the very deep snow on the ground, and I'm snow plowing. And I was in a piece of equipment, my skid steer. It's making a lot of noise. I have my earbuds in, listening to an audiobook. I've been plowing for a few hours at this point. It was slightly snowing. It was very peaceful. I just kind of lost in my own world. And I came across there plowing with my skid steer, and I got down to that exact same point, and I heard that voice, the same thing, stop, don't go any further. Well, that one had to have originated in my head. The equipment was making too much noise, the plowing. I had my earbuds in, listening to the book. You could have been standing 2 feet away from me yelling, and I probably wouldn't have heard you. The fact that I heard it as crystal clear as I did tells me that it had to have been something that happened internally inside my head. It wasn't something I was hearing with my ears. And so I turned around and I started plowing back towards the ranch house. The thing about the skid steer is my blade, and I don't remember, I had like a 6-foot blade on. It took 4 passes to completely plow the road. And so I turn around, I start plowing my second pass back to the command center. I'm coming back on what would be my third pass for that section of the road. And I get down to the triangle, and I just had this conscious debate in my head, like, this is all in your head. You really didn't hear a voice. This is stupid. You're just getting yourself psyched up. And so I continued to go. When I got to that spot where I'd been commanded to stop, I just kept plowing on. And I only went another 100 to 200 feet when all of a sudden I started to have what felt like a neurological effect. I started to shake uncontrollably. I mean, I could barely control it. And I had this gripping terror sweep over me internally, unlike anything I've ever experienced in my entire life. I turned around and I made as fast of an escape as a skid steer can take you at a whole 10 miles an hour, clear out to the edge of the property where my truck and my trailer were parked that I'd used to haul the skid steer there with. I was so terrified. I was out of my mind with fear. And what usually is me easing my skid steer up on the trailer to park it, I hit it going full speed, just trying to get the heck out of there. And I jumped off, left the skid steer running. The lights are on, the ramps are still down. I jumped in my truck and gunned it to get out of there as quick as I could. Continued to shake uncontrollably for another 12 hours.
Oh my goodness, that sounds terrifying. I can't imagine that kind of fear. Thomas, we're coming towards a break. We'll be right back after this.
Million gigawatt paranormal powerhouse, KUNX-DB, The X.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you are in the future because you're listening to Cristina Gomez and Shifting the Paradigm.
Race Hobbs with the X. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you have an interest in unexplained phenomena like ghosts, Bigfoot, and UFOs. And by now, you know that we have our own X blog, the UnX newsletter, and the UnX magazine quarterly. But most of you don't know that we have started our very own paranormal conference. And this year, for safety, this 2-day XCon will be virtual, so you can attend from the comfort of your home. XCon presenters include Whitley Strieber, Micah Hanks, Margie Kay and Preston Dennett, Jimmy Church, Lisa Martin and Wayne Lawrence, Lee Spiegel, Debbie Zegelmeyer, Dan Terry, Kate Grabowski, and Ray Hernandez. There will also be a live paranormal investigation by the Riverside, Iowa Paranormal Team. So come hang out with us in the safety of home as we set out to explain the unexplained Friday, May 13th and Saturday the 14th, 2022. And tickets are on sale now. Go to unxnetwork.com. That's unxnetwork.com.
Are you ready to read about true paranormal events? Unex Media publishes nonfiction books about UFOs, ghosts and haunted places, time anomalies, cryptid creatures, and more. Just like KUNX-DB Radio, it's all about unexplained phenomena. Visit www.unxmedia.com to see our list of great book titles by Debbie Zegelmeyer, Gene Walker, Devin Listrom, Wayne Lawrence, Bill Spicer, and yours truly, Margie Kay. That's unxmedia.com.
Gold loves chaos, uncertainty, and disarray. History shows us what gold does when people aren't sure about the government, the stock market, their jobs, or their retirement savings. Our national debt is skyrocketing. Gold and other precious metals are a defense measure against inflation and a stock market that might take years to recover. So what can you do right now to protect yourself? Call United Gold Group. We offer gold and other precious metals delivered securely within 72 hours. Are you worried about the stock market? We can also help you set up a real gold or silver IRA or a 401k. Safe and secure. United Gold Group makes gold ownership affordable. Call now and get up to $2,500 in free gold or silver with a qualified IRA. Call 800-753-8534. That's 800-753-8534 or visit unitedgoldgroup.com.
Welcome back. Thomas, in Season 2 with the helicopter, you had anomalies such as the radar showing you as being 40 feet off the ground, as if it was reflecting off some unseen surface below. Now, in Season 3, you've got these further anomalies with the canisters and the tracking of them, and the helicopter going through the solid rock of the ridgeline. These are really eye-opening and astonishing anomalies. Have you or the team received any insights since Season 2 or in recent weeks from physicists or scientists in regards to what could be going on, and if there is a relation to portals or space-time warps or quantum theories? And if not, can I ask what opinion or conclusion you yourself have when it comes to these specific anomalies?
Sure. Well, the thing about filming this series is it gives us the opportunity to get out and do a bunch of experiments. The downside to it is we don't always have the time that we would like. Well, let's just put it bluntly. We never have the time that we like to properly go over the data before our next experiment starts. We're on a tight schedule, and so having already planned our next experiment, what we're going to do. Usually what ends up happening is that when the film season ends, Eric has a mountain of data to sift through that literally takes him months and months. And yes, I mean, we look at each one of these incidents and try to follow up on it and try to figure out, okay, so this is what happened. Can we figure out why it happened, and can we go do something to further expound on that, or to take it a little further, to replicate it, try to get the same results. And so, yes, the investigation continues even when the cameras go off and they leave the ranch. The investigation never turns off. Eric works. That guy works unbelievably hard and puts in hours that very, very few people on this planet would be willing to spend. I've watched him work through the day, all the way through the night, through the next day, into the next night, before he finally just stops from sheer exhaustion. Yeah, that guy puts in a lot of hours. So yes, we are looking into it. We've had a lot of individuals reach out with either ideas or theories or experiences that may assist us as we do this. We always welcome, the input. People can always go to our website, skinwalker-ranch.com, and there's a contact us form that they can fill out, and we always welcome suggestions and such. As far as this exercise that we did and dropping the bottles, I'll be honest, I don't know what to make of it. It's pretty perplexing to me. It would have been one thing if all the bottles would have fallen in the same general area. That would at least indicate maybe there was some lower winds that we weren't aware of that could carry them. However, these bottles were strewn haphazardly in both directions, north, south, to the west. Not so much to the east, but definitely to the west and the north and south, and in such a large area that I don't know if the wind had been gusting that we could have got them to deflect as much as they did. I mean, we did the calculations on what that fall should be with the amount of weight and the mass of the bottle. It just mathematically does not add up how a bottle can be dropped from a certain point. And look, my brain automatically goes to, well, okay, they dropped them out of where they thought that they were above the triangle, but you get up 5,000 feet, you can be off just a little bit and have some pretty dramatic results. So that would be one thing if they dropped them out of where they thought they were above the helicopter or above the triangle and all the bottles landed in the same place, that would be one thing. But when they're dropping all the bottles out in the same place and the bottles are landing a long distance apart in every direction, I don't know how to wrap my head around that. And looking at the scientists, I don't think they can either.
And the fact that a lot of canisters cannot be found today is also bizarre. Now, what is perplexing and interesting, and something that you've mentioned in other interviews, is that many paranormal events almost seem tailor made, as in made specifically for a certain person or visitor at the ranch to experience. A similar theory has been mentioned by Japanese UFO researcher Norio Hayakawa, and he stated that people that have experiences could possibly be pre selected to have these events occur. What is your opinion on this? I mean, for you, do you see this as proof that a trickster intelligence is at work, or something more neutral like what quantum physics hints at, like the experiencer themselves is entering some kind of energetic field and becomes the one influencing the phenomenon to personalize the experience they go through?
It's a great question. I do believe that the observer can affect the outcome. I mean, that's my personal belief. Um, but that being said, that doesn't hold true on everything because, I came onto this ranch a pretty big skeptic. I didn't buy into a lot of this stuff. And I look at some of the events that have taken place to me personally. They were things for which I didn't even have a belief in. So I don't know how I could have influenced that. Uh, and it's not that I didn't even have a belief in them. I was agnostic. And so it's not like I don't believe in UFOs. I don't believe in UFOs. And then a UFO shows up. No, like some of these things that have happened are so far off the radar to me that I'm like, I don't know where that could have originated for me. And I've gotten to the point now on the ranch. I don't know how else to. I think it's actually more crazy for someone to try to explain how it's not targeted than for someone to say, yes, there's intelligence behind this, as it's very targeted. I have seen too many times now where the event seems to be specific to the person. Now, is that a result of them affecting it? Possibly, but I just know for myself there are also those events that I've had that I don't know how I could have affected it, because I look inside my programming. I don't find anywhere in my programming that could have originated from. So it's hard to say, but one thing is for sure is that a lot of the things that happen out here very, very specific to a certain individual. I have seen it. I think there'll be some pretty good examples of that coming up in the season 3, of just how targeted this can be.
Now, another facet that hasn't really been given any in-depth study in the show itself is the fact that whatever intelligence or energy is behind the mystery of the ranch follows certain individuals home, some calling it the Hitchhiker Effect, where you get things similar to poltergeist activity with very real physical events going on infecting the individual and their families. Now, this has happened to you so much so that you ended up having to install a home security system with many cameras. Can you please share with us some of the most notable events that have happened to you and your family? And if you've had anything occur that has challenged your spiritual beliefs?
Yeah, so yes, it has followed me home. I am a firm believer in the Hitchhiker Effect. I've often wondered, sometimes the reticular activating system in our head of what makes it to our conscience and what is filtered out. We buy a white Jeep, and the next day we realize 4 of our neighbors have the same white Jeep. We didn't notice it before. It just came into our attention. I've looked back on my household before the ranch and after the ranch saying, has this stuff always been happening and I just didn't notice it? Or is this something that has changed? And I am of the firm belief, and each one of my family members will tell you they are firm believers in the Hitchhiker Effect as well. We've had many, 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 many things happen at our house that did not happen pre-Skinwalker Ranch involvement. And these some of these are as harmless as our electronics behaving in ways that they're not programmed or designed to do. Marquees grow, an example of that is a TV turning itself on and a marquee going across it with a message specific to what is being discussed in the room at the time. Same with phones, tablets, the such. Having our electronics taken over, such as what's been shown on the show, where they start unlocking themselves and misbehaving, opening apps, calling. I had one incident where my car's windows rolled down in the middle of winter, 11 below zero outside. I just returned home from the ranch. I'd gone out to check on the pipes, the command center, make sure that everything was okay. Came home, went inside. I had a 2014 BMW 535i, and it does have the feature that if you hold the button down on the key fob, all the windows will roll down. So it's a feature that's built into the car. However, I only have one key fob for that car, and I'd gone in the house and set the key fob on the dresser or on my little nightstand. And then it was about 45 minutes later when my oldest son alerted me to the fact that my windows were down. Now, the interesting thing about it is I could say, well, okay, somehow I hit that going into the house and it came down. And there's a lot of ways you try to start explaining this away. Well, I did have security cameras running at the time. I went up, I'd parked my car right in front of the one in front of my house. So the car's literally sitting maybe 30 feet away from the camera, which is looking right at it. Sure enough, you see me come, pull into the driveway, you see me get out, you see me go into the house. Video continues long after the time that I would have set that key fob on the dresser. So that eliminates me having hit that button as I walk into the house, right? The interesting thing is the camera, and so the system has multiple cameras on it. There's 8 cameras on that system. 1 out of the 8, the one facing the car, goes down, quits recording. No rhyme or reason why. There's no logs indicating that my system was logged into, no commands given to that camera to turn it off. It just, for whatever reason, stopped recording for a few minutes. When it comes back up, all the windows are down in the car. So you have 2 items there that are taking place at the same time, windows coming down, along with the fact that the camera stops recording at that very moment, and then the camera doesn't come back on until the windows are down. The 2 together make it very, very, statistically, what's the odds of that happening at the same time? We've had plates removed from our cupboard and thrown across the room and shattered against the wall in the middle of the night. There are others for which I don't. There are more terrifying and scary things that have happened at our house for which I don't share publicly. But those are some examples of things that have taken place.
The camera going offline for a few minutes as a paranormal event is going on, it's like it's being ghost hacked, and that's crazy. And also the TVs going weird and showing text messages about what is being discussed by people in the room. I mean, that is like Hollywood horror movie material, and to be honest with you, I think I'd be scared to death. That's a little too much for me. But Thomas, I'm interested in knowing if the hitchhiker effect has happened to multiple individuals at the same time. And I mean, I guess I'm asking if there are multiple entities going out and affecting individuals and families simultaneously.
Well, that's the interesting thing is, our minds would automatically assign that to be multiple entities, and yet we're dealing with realms for which maybe space and time are irrelevant. So it could be the same entity that's doing both. I will tell you that yes, this has affected a lot of people associated with the ranch, but it's so personal. Look, when this hits your house, it's one thing if I'm being terrorized out of the ranch. I'm an adult. I willingly and knowingly put myself in this situation. It is completely different when my wife and kids are dealing with this because, it gets so personal so fast. Like I say, there's things that have happened in my house I will not talk about. And it mess with me, okay. Mess with my wife and my kids, we got some big problems. And so, out of respect to anybody else of the team that may or may not have done this, we are very respectful of each other. I don't talk about their experiences. I will say that I know that it's been publicly said by Travis in one of our panels that we did. You know, he shared some of his experiences, and yes, there have been events that have taken place simultaneously at team members' houses. That's probably about all I want to say without violating their privacy, and I just want to be super respectful of them. But yes, it has happened simultaneously, and one of them involved a team member reaching out to me and calling me in the morning and saying, "Hey, it just so happened that we'd had an incident happen. We'll call it early morning, late night, early morning. This individual called me in the morning. This team member called me in the morning, very, very upset. Started asking me some questions like, hey, this happened to one of my family members, and that happened to exactly and directly correlate with what took place at my house." So, yes, we have seen simultaneous.
That's a really good point. We can only jump into the context of what we see in ghost hunting shows, for example, with poltergeist entities and similar things. And after all, it could indeed be something way beyond our understanding what is doing these things. And I suspect it is. I suspect it goes way beyond any conventional explanation that we can even guess at. Now, switching gears a bit, when I heard that Skinwalker Ranch season 1 was going to be made into a TV debut, I was very excited. I was already familiar with the stories about the ranch and the various things from the time that Bob Bigelow and his NIDS team there. And in season 1, what really impacted me was the ominous warnings about digging on the ranch. And Travis Taylor, who was a really hard science minded guy, was like, now that you told me I can't dig, I have to dig. But little did he know that at the time that you were the one that got injured there around the same time that you were involved with digs on the property, mainly to do with property maintenance. And if I remember correctly, plumbing and electrical lines. So for those who don't know about your injury, can you share with us a brief overview of what happened and how it could be interpreted to be related to whatever is going on out there on the ranch?
Well, this is one of the narratives that was passed down to us that we inherited. I'll never forget. Yeah, I have to do digging. Matter of fact, right after my arrival here, we had to dig and put in a new septic system. And it's a ranch. Digging's necessary. We got to clean ditches. We got to make ditches. There's fence posts. There's all kinds of things that require digging. And like I said, when I came on, one of the things I decided I would do would be to build this road system around the perimeter of the ranch so that we could use UTVs to better patrol it. And I was actually in the middle of working on that when it was the same time frame. I wasn't like on the equipment when this happened. The thing is that my injury first started manifesting itself on a weekend. It was actually on my birthday, March 4th, and it was on a Saturday. This was 2017, and before I went to bed that night, we'd been in a funeral all day of a close family member, and we came home, had some cake and ice cream, celebrated a little bit. And when I went to bed, I had a really sore spot on the back side of my head, and it felt like a bruise, like a really, really tender bruise. the next morning when I woke up, that spot had really, really swollen up to where it was like a really tight goose egg and extremely painful to the touch. I mean, very. And, I hadn't been hit in the head. I hadn't suffered any type of an injury or assignable cause as to what could have caused that. So my explanation was I figured that I must have been bit by an insect, maybe a spider, or, some type of poisonous spider, and so I was reacting to it. But I wasn't too concerned about it. I mean, it hurt like hell, but I wasn't too concerned. And then it continued to progress and to get worse, and that bump actually continued to spread. And it fluid that actually came, and what happened is that the fluid was so tight that it literally separated my scalp from the fatty tissue in my skull. So it scalped me, is what it did. And by the middle of the week, I could my entire scalp all the way down into my eye sockets and just right around my mouth. That was about the only part that was still attached. I could grab my hair and basically walk my scalp around my head because it would have been completely detached. So pretty traumatic. It happened during the same time I was doing a lot of excavation here on the ranch, building these roads. And there's that lore, which again I called BS on when I was told, and I thought that's ridiculous.
I'm so sorry you had to endure that traumatic injury and right around your birthday. Your birthday was just a few days ago, so I do want to wish you happy belated birthday. And Thomas, this time has flown by, and I really can't express how deeply thankful I am for you taking this time out to share with me and my audience all of your insights. Thank you so much for being on Shifting the Paradigm. Where can people find you on social media to keep up to date with you, your interests, and your work at Skinwalker Ranch?
They can follow me on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. They can follow me there. I know this is horrible, but I don't remember what my handles are. I'm not a big social media guy. I'm on Twitter as well, and so those are the three that I try to keep up with: is Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Thank you so much.
It's been great. Thank you.
You're listening to the UNX Network, KUNX-DB, Kansas City, Missouri.
It was such an honor to speak with Thomas Winterton and to hear his experiences and thoughts of the Skinwalker Ranch. While there are some scary stories attached to the ranch, I would still go if given the opportunity. If we don't take risks, we'll never progress. And there are locations like Skinwalker Ranch across the United States and across the world where there's just a hub for a bunch of different phenomena to happen in one place, many of which are in remote areas that may be harder to find. While so much research has been done on Skinwalker Ranch already, I would still like to do my own research as well if possible. If you could go to the ranch, what would you bring? You probably know what I would take, and that would be ramen, obviously. I have to bring up the word ramen somewhere in each of my streams, and it's up to you to find where that word has been placed. But on a serious note, write what you would bring in the comment section below. Maybe I forgot a few things on my checklist. Also, check out my show extras and watch my guests play games as well. So consider being a Patreon supporter. There you can get extra perks and benefits. I would like to mention that my new show, Strange Paradigms, will be airing live every Friday at 3 p.m. PST, where I cover paranormal and mysterious news items of the week. This Friday, my guest co-host will be Chris Plain, the head science writer for The Debrief. It's always a pleasure to speak with him when given the chance. He brings his knowledge of intense science topics coupled with a fun sense of humor. So make sure to ring the notification bell if you're watching this on YouTube. Also, take a look at my website called strangeparadigms.com, where you can catch all of my shows in video and podcast format, along with blog postings, guest appearances, and contact information. As for my social media, you can also find it on my website or in the description box below. There you can find my Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and podcasts. I want to wish you all a wonderful week. Please like this video or podcast on your platform of choice and share it with those who have the same interest. Subscribe if you haven't already, because there's a lot more great shows coming to you soon. Be safe, and remember, keep your eyes on the skies.